welcome to the Fit Dads podcast. Brad, excuse my French, but what the fuck is hybrid? Where did it come from? And why does every lad who lifts weights and runs have in his Instagram bio a hybrid athlete?
Great question. We'll cover that today, shall we?
We will cover that today.
Yeah.
Hybrid, it's the fad term, it's the one that everyone's using, it's the kind of the high rocks associated kind of a phrase, I guess. We're going to talk about where we think it stemmed from, what it kind of is and who is defined in this category, whether it's a valid term to use, and around that kind of style of training that's associated with it, how we think is best to approach it and really crack it.
Somebody explained it to me once, which is like, it's a bit like having a really nice looking sports car, but then it having an absolutely dog shit engine.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's got like a Fiat Panda engine in a Ferrari, you know.
Or vice versa, you've got like an amazing looking car and it goes, it's a 1.2.
Yeah. So it's a bit like, cool, that's almost putting an engine in something that looks great. So a lot of people just train for aesthetics. I feel like they've seen the benefit of, I should probably look after my insides here. I should probably be a bit more functional. I've cringed ever said that word, actually.
Functional.
But be a little bit more, you know, useful. I don't know. A bit more, you can put it into practice.
Yeah. What I wanted to say straight off the bat is, I love this movement of hybrid. I think it's really good. What it promotes is fantastic. It promotes guys not only lifting weights, but also being, as you said, fit, having the aesthetics alongside being able to perform unbelievably. Where do you think it stemmed from, this hybrid term?
Someone will probably tell me it started before CrossFit, but when I cast my mind back, before CrossFit, people were usually in like a, you know, they were in a hole, you know what I mean? Like they were in a category.
Yeah.
You're a powerlifter, you're a bodybuilder, you're a runner. All of a sudden, CrossFit sort of came along saying, I reckon we can combine all of them.
Yeah.
Every discipline you can imagine.
You can't do all those. CrossFit went, hold my beer, we'll go create a sport based all around that.
Yeah. Which, I think the tagline of like CrossFit is, what is it, the CrossFit champions are like the fittest on earth. And you only have to look at what they can do, and they look like they can do anything. It's crazy.
And I don't dispute that. It's a bold claim because there's so many different levels of fitness.
It's relative, isn't it? I suppose all round speaking.
Yeah, I don't dispute it. You know, it is phenomenally hard. But I actually think that CrossFit, back in the day, if you lifted weights and you ran and you were fit, you were just a CrossFitter basically. That's kind of the term. I think hybrid came around post CrossFit when guys were like, well, I don't do CrossFit. I just go to the gym, I lift weights, I might do some deadlifts, I might train like your general push-pull legs. Yeah. But I also like doing a conditioning circuit. Yeah. I like pushing my heart rate. I like going for a run. I like swimming. And now all of a sudden, what's the term? What am I? I'm not classified as anything else. So this hybrid term, I think, originated from that. Yeah. I think anyway.
I agree. But then I look at maybe some of the jargon that's used in hybrid, and it's very CrossFit in a way, which is like EMOMs, AMRAP, not so much WODs, but like Metcons, you know, that metabolic conditioning side of things. It's taken a lot of inspiration from it. And I'm fascinated by High Rocks just because of, I think it was you told me that it's just the same workout
everywhere in the world.
That's bonkers.
The business models, when I think about what High Rocks is, it makes no sense because it's so one-dimensional. Yeah. And also amazingly complex and multi-dimensional. Yeah. One-dimensional in the fact that it is, from the moment it came around, it was one workout that just straight away hit home. Everyone loved it. It's the same thing, so you can go and repeat it and you can actually base it on your times. You can see how well you did because you're doing exactly the same workout each time. Yeah. But it's fascinating how much it's grown in popularity just from that one thing. But I think that is its appeal. They always say this: the best ideas are the most simple ideas. And I think maybe the barrier to entry for some people, maybe for myself, I mean, where I'm at right now in my own training, CrossFit's looking more and more appealing. But it is very multifaceted. I love some aspects of the CrossFit style of training. Some of the workouts they do are amazing. But I'm really not into Olympic lifting. Like I just don't gel with it. Like, I'll do some cleans, I'll do them if I have to, but I wouldn't choose to do them in my programme. Yeah. It's just not my bag.
Yeah, and I think if someone were to look at doing like a CrossFit event, especially in the past, like maybe 10 years ago, you probably couldn't escape the Olympic lifts. Whereas now, I think the programming's not wisened up, but it's probably become a little bit more inclusive. Whereas High Rocks, it's like, you don't really have to learn all this complex technique. You just have to be strong enough, fit enough, and be willing to put the hours in to train, which I think is really appealing for a lot of people with maybe nursing injuries and that sort of stuff. And there's essentially less to do. You know, you've not got to walk on your hands, you've not got to master any gymnastics. You know,
Yeah, true.
So, yeah.
Even the gymnastics side, it's like that. You know, CrossFit is as hybrid as you get, isn't it? In terms of the amount of sports and techniques that you need to perform it. What really appeals to me about High Rocks is more the fact that it's more up my street in terms of quite basic, simple exercises I've been doing pretty much since I started training over 20 years ago. Obviously, combine that with a little bit of rowing, a little bit of skiing, a little bit of running. It's all the things I love, basically, in one sport, which is great.
I'm very keen to not make this episode like High Rocks versus CrossFit, because we've sort of got, you know, I'm training in that sort of discipline, that multifaceted CrossFit side of things. You know, the gymnastics side of things is great for me just because I don't do it. I've never done it.
How have you gone with that, by the way? I just can't imagine you doing a handstand, handstand walk.
It's quite fun, you know. Yeah, it's fun. It's like wall walks and like it's knowing that you can regress things.
Do they have CCTV in there? I want to see some of your gym fails. They need to make it online.
Do you know what, mate? I'm just going to put some videos on of me just falling over. But no, even just like the coaches, like the quality of coaching is amazing, and that's great. But if you were someone who's wanting to train for a High Rocks, you can get away with not having the really technically skilled coaches, if that makes sense, because they've got the format to follow. And I think that for a lot of people is so appealing. So it's almost like they've taken what most people would see the best of CrossFit maybe and packaged it together to be like, okay, if you want to be hybrid, if you can do all these things, wicked.
I think within the hybrid term, though, we've just basically picked out two businesses essentially.
Yeah.
But there's so much more to this. Like, one thing that I think is that the funny origination of this word hybrid kind of sits a little bit not right with me as well, in a way, because I mentioned this to you the other day. No one's calling rugby players hybrid. No one's calling triathletes hybrid. No one's calling Olympic athletes. What's that sport called where you do all the different events?
Decathlon.
Decathlon, yeah. No one's calling decathlon athletes hybrid, although they are multifaceted in every aspect of their sport.
Yeah.
So I think this term came around purely for people, I think, who just wanted to lift weights and do a little bit of cardio, really. Whether you can call yourself a hybrid athlete is a different kind of ball game altogether, because an athlete, essentially, you're competing in something. So if you are doing, I mean, there's one called DECA. Have you heard of DECA or DECA?
No.
DECA. That's one I came across the other day, and that's massive. Loads of people do it across the UK, Europe, America. There's so many little bits, even like Tough Mudder. Tough Mudders are essentially a hybrid style of training.
Yeah.
But hybrid is so broad, isn't it?
I always look and think who coined it and why, and it probably is a way to package it up.
Yeah.
I'm going to sound really awful now. It could be a way to package it up and sell things.
Yeah, true. No, there's a marketing ploy behind everything. Yeah. But I also think we like to be part of groups. We like to have a term. I'm a CrossFitter. I'm a footballer. I'm a rugby player. I'm a hybrid athlete.
Yeah.
Or I like to train hybrid.
Yeah.
People in the fitness space will probably know more about what you do in terms of your exercise if you say hybrid. It's become like its own little, like I said, it's a fad word. It's something that's kind of going around at the moment, but people know essentially what it is.
I think I've said this to you before, like, my name may as well be Jack, because very much Jack of all trades. I don't necessarily specialise in anything. It's quite nice to do things and then, I don't know, tweak a little bit.
Yeah.
To, especially for client's sake, if I can learn how to do X, Y, and Z, I might be able to deliver Y to them because I've got the experience of it. So yeah, it's interesting. So this style of training in particular is really appealing to someone like myself who maybe has never felt like they belong in a category, or it's almost like a miscellaneous category, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So there's so many of those miscellaneous categories now, isn't there, depending on what you're into.
Yeah.
Coming back to what I said, I think I love the fact that hybrid, that term, and this movement around being more multifaceted in what you do with your training. Like, people aren't afraid now to cross disciplines and do different styles of training in the same kind of block or week of their kind of training block, essentially, which is great. I love all that stuff. You know, it's the kind of, you know, the fast performing car that looks great. We want to promote that from a health point of view. It's something that's taken a little bit of time to get that uptick over the years. But, you know, people who are strong and are fit, I think they're the most they're the most dangerous motherfuckers out there, I think.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, big time.
You know, bodybuilders look scary. Powerlifters might look scary. But if you're looking at someone who's a dangerous person, I think it's someone in that kind of hybrid category who is really strong but also really fit.
Yeah.
They're people who will just humble you in every sense when it comes to the weights and the cardio.
Someone who can hit you and then run away.
Basically, yeah. Or you just can't get near.
Yeah. Which, but one guy I really wanted to shout out today is a guy called Ross Edgley.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mate.
He's been hybrid from day one. I mean, I think I've followed Ross for quite a long time, and I'm sure I saw him online talking about one of his theses at university, whether it was his master's or something like that, or maybe his PhD. I'm not sure if he's got one of those. But he was talking about a study that he wanted to do, because he was always really strong, but he was always into his fitness.
Yeah.
And I'm sure at university he did something like this, where he tried to do a study on how strong can you be and how fit can you be at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're going to mention some of the events that he's done.
Yeah, great. I think he did like a triathlon where
That's right.
What did he do? Swim across the Caribbean, towing a tree.
Yeah. It was like a triathlon, basically, running, swimming and cycling with...
like a tree on his back.
Yeah, basically a tree. And not a small looking tree, like a proper... And not a tree with bushes, by the way. It'd been like
a massive tree.
Almost like the middle of a tree.
Yeah.
So they cut the roots off, they cut the top off, and it was just the huge trunk of a tree strapped to his back.
He's done the world's strongest marathon, where he towed a mini.
Saw that as well.
Yeah. And then you think he rope climbed Everest, which is... you just think, what is happening? Like, as in not actual Everest, but he rope climbed the height of Everest. Yeah.
That's right, yeah. So he rope climbed up it, slid down.
Yep.
Not sure if you saw his hands after that. They were absolutely in tatters.
I heard about his feet. Apparently he dropped down, and then it felt like, you know when you like stand on a waterbed, and then he felt like this, and then all his feet got wet, and he took his shoes off. And sorry if anyone's a bit squeamish, but apparently he looked at his feet and all his skin's just like
blood everywhere,
flapped off. So he just taped them together and carried on.
Oh god, no thanks. He's, I mean, in terms of mentality, like different level. I mean, yes, the word hybrid is a style of training, but to do that at an elite level, there's a mindset that comes with that as well, like being able to push your body to places that most people just will never ever be able to go. I've actually just Googled here who coined the word hybrid athlete, and whether this is right or not, it's an article written in December 2023. Apparently there's a guy called Alex Viada. He is a Hyrox masterclass leader. Alex officially coined the term hybrid athlete in 2015 when he wrote the book The Hybrid Athlete, which focuses specifically on combining strength and endurance training to push the limits of human performance. So he wrote a book in 2015 called The Hybrid Athlete, which is interesting.
I'm gutted it's not someone called like Graham Hybrid. Someone it's named after. But yeah, I think that's really cool actually, because it backdates a lot of maybe what I thought. You know what I mean? I'd be keen to read that actually.
That's really early, to be fair.
Yeah, that's really early, which is it's wicked, and I think it probably highlights the fact that it feels like a trend, if you know what I mean. I think anything that gets pissed up out of it online feels like a trend. Do you know what I mean? And there's a lot of people who are like, "Oh, you hybrid now, are you?" And it's like, here we go. So anything that jumps to popularity and gets mixed up out of it.
It is. I think some of it's justified, like the thing about the rugby players, for example. You know, really, let's be honest, we're just fit. We're not hybrid. It's just fitness, isn't it? Like if you're really, really good at endurance sports, running, cycling, swimming, but you're not strong, in my eyes, you're not really fit.
Yeah.
And vice versa. If you're a powerlifter, a bodybuilder who can shift serious amounts of weight, got loads of muscle mass, but you can't run like at least 3K or something, so you're not fit.
Yeah. Would you probably say a hybrid is the ability to go like one way or the other? If you imagine you sit bang in the middle between strong and fit, or like, you know, traditional style cardio, fit, and you sat bang in the middle, do you see a hybrid as having that ability to do both and maybe travel in both directions?
We mentioned this on the previous podcast. We mentioned about having both aspects as part of your training and trying to strive for pretty decent success in both of them, and being quite advanced across both strength work and fitness stuff. I think that really for me is maybe not necessarily getting to that advanced level, but definitely doing that style of training. I think if you're going to class yourself as a hybrid athlete, then you've got to be pretty advanced across your weights. You've got to be shifting some half decent numbers across kind of your bench, deadlift, squat.
Yeah.
But you've also got to be phenomenally fit on the road as well. And there's a reason hybrid athletes, CrossFitters included in that, look the way they look. They're jacked, great amount of muscle mass, amazing shape, but also shredded as well.
Yeah.
Most of the year round, because they're just doing so many different types of training. What you also have to appreciate when you do those kinds of, when you mix those kind of sports and those disciplines, your week ends up looking really busy in terms of what you do. I know that because that's essentially how I train right now. I've got my own high rocks coming up in October, and my week's jam-packed with stuff. It really is. I absolutely love it. I love the challenge. I love being pushed. But there are some moments where I'm like, I'm training not far off like an athlete does there, in terms of your output. Not that I'm classing myself in that category at all, because I'm definitely not. I'm a complete newbie to running. I only started doing it in February. But I love having that kind of different style of training in my week. I could almost, to the point now where I look back maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, and I think, how was I only doing like your push-pull legs and your bodybuilder strength style stuff? Why was I only doing that? Why was I not doing this kind of stuff? Yeah. I've always dabbled a little bit in the conditioning stuff, but I do love that multidiscipline stuff for sure.
Feel better for it? Yourself?
Absolutely, 100%. Just little things like, I mean, I live in a townhouse, so there's 3 stories. There's 14 steps from bottom to middle. There's 14 steps from middle to top. So if I've got my office is on the top floor. So yesterday, for example, had some lunch, went upstairs. As soon as I sat down in my office, doorbell goes, delivery's here. I'm up and down them stairs like 10, 15 times a day. Just little things like that. When I wasn't doing the fitness stuff, that would really get me out of breath. I'd get upstairs to my office after going up and down a couple of times. I'd be huffing and puffing, and there's none of that now. There really isn't. And little things you notice, you have these metrics on watches and things like that, and they're all telling me that resting heart rate's better and VO2 max is better. Those things feel great, and you feel that in the way you move day to day. You really do.
I had a consultation with someone yesterday, and I always say to people that PTs are trained to like spot vagueness. So if someone says like, I want to get fit, I want to know what that means. I want to know what it means to that person.
Yeah.
So as soon as I got the specifics of how they wanted it to feel and how we can make it look, you can sort of reverse engineer it a little bit. That being said, I joked before we started saying like, how do we do it right? Ryan's probably a man just because you're living it right now, in terms of you've got a set date that you're trying to perform for. So maybe if someone did want to do it right, have you got any advice for someone who maybe wants to attack?
I guess it really depends what angle you're coming from. Because coming into, I guess, the hybrid style of training, you're going to have something that you've done for many years, probably, or something can be more veered towards, whether that's, let's say you're coming at it from a strength point of view, bodybuilding point of view, and you just like the idea of doing a bit of running every now and again. Just start really slowly and build up in the discipline that you're not very strong at. Vice versa, if you're doing a lot of running, but you want to do some of these high rocks events and you're thinking, I just can't imagine doing walking lunges and sled pushes and wall balls. I can't see myself doing that. I don't think I've got the legs for it. Then just start doing those things really slowly. Have one session in your week where you're doing that stuff. Start with one. Yeah. After a month or so, up it to 2. And then before you know it, you'll be rearranging your week based around this new discipline that you're getting in there. For example, for me, I used to do 2 pushes, 2 pulls, 2 legs. I trained 6 times a week. That was very, very kind of strength, bodybuilding orientated. I now only do 1 push-pull legs a week. It's still semi-bodybuilding, but I've changed the format, so I'm not doing as many drop sets and I'm not doing as many hypertrophy-based formats to really break down muscle and maximise hypertrophy. Now I'm just doing the essentials for staying strong. I might only do 5, 6, 7 lifts, 3, 4 sets of each, rep ranges of maybe 3 to 12 tops. I'm never really going over that. And that for me means that I've got some endurance left in my legs and my upper body, so that when I go and do, I've got a coach at the moment who I see on a Wednesday, Mick Blythe, and I need some energy for that. Like, he's getting me to do all sorts of rep ranges, hundreds of things sometimes. And if I've been doing supersets the day before, there's no way my muscles have got it in me. But if I've been doing some strength work, I've now got something left in the tank to go and perform well in those sessions. So it's about really gearing your training towards keeping recovery high, not overloading muscles, and making sure every boundary is covered in whatever it is you're training for.
I think my main concern with someone who's obviously not as experienced as yourself, if they're wanting to pick it up and start training like this hybrid way, is probably just the risk of not necessarily overtraining. And we mentioned Lee Bell earlier, his entire work sort of geared towards understanding overtraining. I think it's got the potential to mean someone could overtrain, causing a couple of injuries, negative opinion of that if they do, if that makes sense. So when it comes to maybe someone overtraining and scheduling the program, I almost want to just spread that message of don't feel like you have to commit to all hours under the sun initially. When the time gets closer, maybe you need that little bit of an endurance boost and need to actually make sure you can last an hour and 20, hour and a half of this event. Yeah.
Adaptation is the key word here, and that adaptation happens over longer periods of time. You'll be doing things right now. Pause.
That's fine. We'll pause.
We'll go from adaptation. Remember that?
Adaptation.
Come in, Walter. Come on in. Come on in.
Hello, mate.
He's up now, that's never a good thing either.
He'll be alright. Adaptation, mate.
Okay.
I've remembered it. Have you got much more notes on your side?
Not massive amounts, no. I've pretty much covered most of the things.
Same for me.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just keep it flowing for as long as we need.
Let's go for it.
I think adaptation is the main word here. Adaptation happens over long periods of time as opposed to short periods of time, and you have to allow your body, from a recovery point of view, from a training, endurance, strength point of view, to let that adaptation happen. And there's two things people do wrong, I think. Number one is they go too hard too soon. They try and incorporate every aspect of the high-end elite level training too early on, and they'll either injure themselves or they'll burn out. And number two is I don't think they probably push it enough. They're probably either on one or two ends of the spectrum. And if you don't push it enough, you're never going to progress in everything. So again, just coming back to programming, I think programming when you're a hybrid athlete could not be more important. It just really pays to have someone looking over it and maybe having, just getting, if it's not getting a coach, but having advice on it, speaking to other athletes, getting yourself immersed in like the community of hybrid essentially.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that as well, because one thing I've noted down here is coaches and classes should meet you where you're at. And I guarantee you, when you first started with Mick, can you imagine doing what you're doing now?
Oh God, no.
On week one.
Oh, session one, like.
Oh, session one probably felt pretty grim, but I think if you did that again now,
horrible.
You'd be, you survive it a bit better.
Mick does like a progressive overload protocol in like his endurance as well, which is really, really good. He programs it really well. And he tends to have this philosophy where he does like the same workout for 3 sessions in a row. And each session you do that, some metric will change, whether it's more weight, more reps, an extra set in there. And he will maybe tweak all 3 of those some sessions it would be 1, and he's looking at obviously how you perform in certain things and whether he thinks next time you could do more there. But I really like that, because it actually, even though it's quite a simple format, he has really good metrics for how you're improving, and you can look back at the amount of volume I do in a session now compared to session 1. It's completely night and day. It actually scares. It would, if you'd, the sessions I do now, if you'd shown me that session on day 1, it would have really scared me, probably would have put me off. And that again is where a really good coach comes in, so that they don't put you off exercise and training. And I think people, when they don't have a coach, put themselves off it. They do like an elite level or even like an intermediate advanced level program in their week. They do 2 or 3 weeks of that and go, I just can't keep up with this. It's just too much. When you're training your legs and you're doing conditioning and you've got a high rock style session in there and you've got some running in there, your legs are absolutely fried. completely fried all the time. And it takes a while for them to adapt. And in the first few months of me doing this style training, that was a real barrier for me. I was unsure at one point whether it was going to get any better, but I just tread that fine line between pushing the limits and then maybe coming back a little bit. But now I feel like the legs and the endurance side of things isn't as much of a concern.
In the strength and conditioning world, they call it super compensation.
Super compensation, I like that.
Which is basically like you overdo what you can. Lane Norton talks about it really well. He basically says, for him as like a powerlifter, for example, he will train under fatigue for quite a high period. So you almost mask what you're actually capable of. And then when he sort of tapers before a competition and scales back and recovers, when he hits competition, he's up there because he's not masking any fatigue anymore.
Brilliant.
And that's a really cool way to view it. And again, sort of letting people in behind the curtain a little bit, volume versus intensity. You said volume there. Compare that to intensity, like a high rocks that you're going for has quite a lot of volume and it's very intense. You can only really train, I'm not going to say for one at a time, but it's very difficult to train both consistently. You might have to have bouts where it's high volume and the intensity drops a bit. There's bouts where it's really intense and the volume drops a bit until eventually you can peak.
We call that training blocks, don't we?
Yeah.
So I think I do this a hell of a lot with all the kind of hybrid, quote unquote, guys that I coach and girls, and they have training blocks where, yes, in their week they're doing the strength work, they're doing the endurance work, but we might have a block of 6 weeks, 8 weeks where we go, right, we're really going to look at increasing your VO2 max. So a lot of the sessions are sprint style stuff, row machines, ski erg, very, very in like high intense endurance stuff. Then we might go, right, we're going to look at distance and we're going to look at adaptation through longer forms of cardio at a lower intensity. So we might then go, maybe we're going to do some, we're going to do some 20, 30k runs. And we're going to get your body used to doing that. So when we come back to something like a high rocks at 8k, your body's so much more adapted. That 8k, the first time I did an 8k run, I was like, Jesus Christ. I remember the first time I did a 10k. And I got to 8k in that run, and I was like, imagine running that and then doing an exercise in between every single one, like you would do in hybrid, so in high rocks.
Yeah.
And it just baffled my mind. Now I'm doing that style of training more frequently, and it seems more achievable. But again, it's building up, having your training blocks, focusing on certain things. If you need a strength block in there because you feel like, you know, you aren't where you want to be on your sled push because that's 150 kilos on the high rocks, then go and have a strength block where you're really driving power through your legs. Let's say it's the wall balls you're really struggling with. Go and have a 6 to 8 week block where you're looking at endurance in your legs and muscular endurance as to how far you can push the boundaries there. And these blocks are so important when it comes to that hybrid style of training.
Is there anyone in particular who you think could really benefit from this type of training? Because I've mentioned it a couple of times before. I've got a few ideas of someone who I'd maybe turn their attention to this sort of stuff. But have you got any? What's your input?
This isn't something that I would recommend to people right at the start. I mean, a lot of people get starry-eyed with this stuff and they go, "Oh, I love that. You're doing all the kind of styles of training." But if you're, you know, for lack of a better term, a bit of a couch potato at the moment, the last thing you want to do is like hybrid style training.
Yeah.
You want to just very gently get into small amounts of movement. Now, that doesn't mean you have to train every day. You could just go for some walks, throw some runs in there. You could go and lift a few weights. That, in a way, I guess that is hybrid, isn't it? You know, they might be doing it to an elite level, but they're still making some moves forwards. But I wouldn't recommend doing this very intense training block style of training initially. I would just do a broad range of things at a very low intensity. So let's say, for example, you get someone who's, you know, is a bit of a couch potato, wants to be quote unquote fit. They want to build some muscle, lose a bit of muscle mass, and they want to build the fitness. In their week, we might get them pretty much walking most days, getting them on the feet more. Within those walks over the coming weeks and months, we then get them running a little bit more in a few of those runs. Or those walks. So we might say we're doing a 30-minute walk. We might go, right, we're going to have at least 10 minutes of that running now, broken up into maybe 2-minute sections with some walking in between. Alongside that, we might have them doing just your main fundamental compounds. Go and have a session where you just do your strength, your deadlift, your back squat and your bench press. We might have a session in there where it is a bit more endurance-based, muscular endurance-based. So we might have a session where we go and do maybe some more your hypertrophy style techniques. That's 3 sessions right there. Start them off with that. Those three are going to be great: strength, muscular endurance, and then very slowly building that fitness. Alongside that, you can then maybe start factoring in like some cross training, shall we call it, where you start doing some more conditioning stuff. Maybe you are doing some deadlifts in a circuit with some walking lunges, and you start combining a few of these disciplines in the same sessions. But that's how initially I would do it. And you're going to get to a point where you need maybe some more advanced training there. But again, what was it you mentioned? The coach or the class should accommodate the client.
Meet them where they're at.
Meet them where they're at. Yeah, I love that.
Whereas I'm probably going to address a type of person directly. It's probably more what you were like a year ago. So I think someone who maybe has got a solid exercise routine down, but then it's not quite doing it for them anymore. You know, the
mental stimulation's gone.
Yeah, they're fed up of just training for how they look. They might have got a few little niggles that, you know, are interrupting, you know, family life and that sort of stuff. Maybe you can't run around after your kid like you used to. You know, you feel a little bit heavy on your feet. Your chest feels like your lungs are raisins. You know, you just can't quite turn over air like you used to. I think that I've always said it. If someone's really all they've ever done is train for aesthetics, or they've not trained for performance for a long time, that's how I see what a hybrid is essentially. You know, it's someone who can cover a lot of bases in terms of hypertrophy, strength, and, you know, cardio. Essentially, that's it for me.
What I will say is, and it'll be a huge shock for anyone who's in that same boat that I was in a year ago, where I was just doing your typical bodybuilding, strength style training program. I had been doing for many years. As soon as I started trying to actually be what I say, quote unquote, functional in my movements and being a bit fitter, being a bit lighter on my toes, being a bit more explosive, adding a bit more impact into my training, the pushback was phenomenal. I can't tell you how tricky it was navigating that. Yeah. The amount of little niggles and setbacks, and if it wasn't my back starting to play up because of the impact, it was my calves, it was some shin splints, it was my knees a little bit. And there was so many moments where I had to really change my week completely and my program at a moment's notice. When I'm, you know, doing a run and halfway through, my calves have gone and I've got to walk back home now. And now I know I can't run for at least another week, but I still want to get fit. How am I going to navigate this? There's obviously, you don't have to run to keep fit. There's obviously so many other pieces of equipment you can use in the gym. Yeah. But it's a minefield when you first get into it. I think that minefield is what puts a lot of people off. And I was almost convinced initially that it wasn't for me. I was thinking, this one, I've just trained so hard in one direction for so long that I don't think I can get back to being that hybrid style of athlete.
What a way to silence self-doubt, though. Yeah. You know, just by trying to do it and finding your way around it and adapting. Yeah. I saw something online which was this dad who raced his son on every one of his son's birthdays, and he was determined to always try and beat him.
Okay.
And I said to my wife, I'm like, look, do you think I could do that with Ted? Like, I wonder what age Ted can get to where I might be able to still beat him. Right. Because obviously time's going to be against me, whereas Ted's just going to keep growing and getting faster and developing. So in my head, I'm like 14, 15, probably still do him.
I love that, actually, 'cause it's a nice challenge for you both, isn't it? Yeah. It's a challenge for the kids, but right, I want to beat my dad. But it's also a challenge for you to keep up with him. Yeah. I really like that.
That's cool. Chances,
yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I think it'll be all right.
What age do you think that'll turn?
14. How faster than my dad at 14? But
how slow will you be in 10 years' time?
That's what I mean. It's worth training for, isn't it? As long as it's not like 21, then I will be having words with him. I'll be like, come on, Ted, I'm a pensioner now. But
yeah, I think it's those little kind of games you can play with your kids are fantastic, and not enough people, I think, promote that. And you know, we've spoken it so many times on the podcast, but as the fit dads on this podcast, we need to kind of, I think, to a certain degree, let our kids know that this is normal, competition's normal, fitness is normal, and having that kind of gamification of it, like every year on your birthday, we're going to have a little race. Yeah. And he might even look forward to that as much as, well, maybe not as much as the presents, but he'll look forward to every year seeing where he is. I'm a year older than last time now. Can I beat him? The chances are you probably will end up having some more races in the year, but
I will say I've schooled him on both of his first, second, and third birthdays.
I'd be worried if you hadn't, mate. I'd be giving you some lessons.
Yeah, so I'm getting worried now, though. He's getting quick.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to the what the fuck is hybrid episodes.
No, I think it's more, I do feel like we've covered a decent amount in terms of maybe how to do it right, who should consider it, and mainly just, again, how it became popular. Hopefully that's given people a bit of an idea that it's, hopefully here to stay, because I do really like this movement. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's the overriding message we do want to get across. Again, it's probably a little bit of an eye-catching title, a little bit clickbaity maybe, but we do definitely love the movement. We love what it promotes. We love the fact that the industry and how even like gyms are specifically designed now for this style of training. I love that. I think it's great because it's not very, it doesn't promote this kind of very singular, one-way thinking style of training.
And I do think if someone's curious about it and you've listened to this and you've got a lot of use out of it, we know what to do by now. Okay, it's just forward in the fit dads.
# forward the fit dads, let people know. And if you've got any questions personally about kind of getting into this style stuff, maybe you've seen it online and thought, actually, I do fancy that, but I don't know where to start. If you haven't got the ideas and kind of the kind of systems you need from this podcast, reach out to me or Brad. Happy to answer any questions and maybe point you in the right direction of other people, the coaches, or who knows, potentially even joining our programs.
Why not?
Guys, thank you for joining us on the Fit Dads podcast. We'll see you on the next one.
See you soon.